You're on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thanks for joining us tonight. Good to be back. Good to see you. Thanks for being here with us tonight. We have a very interesting and captivating show. We're literally covering several subjects tonight. So stick around. Enjoy the show for the next half hour or so. One of my guests joining us right now, I want to say hi to him at the top of the show. We're talking about his website. You probably like it. With us tonight, Phantoms and Monsters wizard Lon Strickland's here to talk about flying monster phenomena in the Chicago area. Welcome, Lon.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you. Good. I always enjoy reading your website. We're going to give everybody the links to that in our social media post. But we will be right back with you shortly because we want to talk about these things flying around in Chicago. What's in the air? Who knows? We'll talk about it in a few minutes. But also with us tonight, you know her from TikTok, our friend Murder Geek 7, Amanda Thomas, is here, and she's going to be talking to us about hauntings and poltergeists. Good to see you, Amanda. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. So hauntings and weird events, what's going on here?
The thing about these cases that I really enjoyed was that two of them were backed with police evidence, and I just thought that was kind of interesting.
And once again, we can't seem to get rid of the Conjuring stories. It just kind of weaves its way into the paranormal world. And we'll be talking about that a little bit tonight, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. We'll be with you shortly. Before we get to all of that, we want to tell you about our good friend Jacob Kaye. He was here a couple of weeks ago. He's headed to LA to raise money to save endangered rhinos in Africa. And before that, our producer, Scotty Barrett's joining here as well to tell us a little bit about what's going on with Jacob. Hey, Scotty. See, your mic is muted. And your mic's muted. Okay, we'll check in with Scotty later on. But I can tell you, Scotty was going to tell us that Jacob is setting off to LA. He'll be here in Houston at a show at his comedy venue, Houston's own House Party Comedy for a Comedy Dog Show, July 22nd. It's titled That's My Dog. DAWG. This free show, donations greatly appreciated, in partnership with the LA Zoo, raises money for a very special cause that Jacob is very close to, saves giraffes and helps a family in South Africa who's also been working with Jacob to help save endangered rhinos. Now, we featured him in our last episode of the Road Beyond podcast, episode number 66. If you'd like to see that episode, check our YouTube channel. And anyway, let's go back. Scotty, are you on yet? Still having some issues with audio. Okay, let's go back to a special commemoration way back to July 1969. Now, I was 4.5 at the time, but I literally remember this. I really do remember sitting in the family room with my parents, the black and white TVs on, and we're literally watching men land on the moon. I mean, it was phenomenal seeing that. And it was probably, we all had maybe 19-inch TVs back then. I think Scotty had an RCA TV. I probably did too. But let's take a look at that event. Nathan, our director, if you could roll maybe some video just to see how phenomenal this was and how historic it was.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. I'm at the foot of the ladder.
Incredible. I bet a lot of you do remember when all that happened, you know. One thing I know that this was very inspirational to Scotty because, you know, I met up with him years later. He was a journalist back, well, we're all journalists still, and I was as well. And he said that this thing with Walter Cronkite inspired him to get onto covering journalism. He was at the White House as a correspondent for ITNA covering the Iran hostage crisis. He met Walter Cronkite as well, as I did myself. Many years later, though, and certainly inspired many people's careers. But let's get on to the main event tonight. Let's start talking about some of the things we have going on. Lon Stricker is joining us. Lon, good to see you. You're a growing legend in the paranormal field, I guess I would say. But tell us what's going on in the Chicago area. We got things flying around the skies. They're humanoid. What's happening there?
Well, this has been going on since, well, probably before, but 2011, we had 3 sightings within the south side of the city of what people were describing as a winged humanoid. Now, that those three sightings occurred the summer of 2011. Then after that, it kind of waned off. There were probably a few sightings, and we did receive sightings later, but up till 2017, early 2017, then we started getting a whole smattering of sightings. And since that time, we're up to about 163 sightings that we believe are viable sightings.
And you have an interactive map that's been built because of all these sightings. I mean, I've read about this on your website. Mm-hmm. This doesn't seem like things, I mean, you would hear about that much, but a flying humanoid, obviously there's something going on there. I mean, is it a phenomena? Is it word of mouth? People thinking they're seeing something? What do you personally think, in your own opinion, is happening here?
Well, I think people are actually seeing something. I mean, the fact that the descriptions were coming in fairly steady, and we do occasionally still get sightings, and then the phenomena is still occurring. But we've got many people who are giving the same descriptions and without knowing that this has been going on. And in fact, I had an encounter back in 1988 here in Pennsylvania. It's very similar to what people are seeing out in Chicago. So, yeah, I believe it's real. I mean, I don't think people are making this up. I mean, this is something that myself and my team have been working on for quite a while. And, it's not really like we're out there digging up sightings. People are coming forward and reporting it to us. So, yeah, we do believe there's something really going on.
Tell me about your personal experience with this and the sighting that you had.
Well, in 1988, I was living down in Baltimore at the time. Now, I'm from the South Central Pennsylvania area, and I moved down there. I lived down there for about 40 years and moved back up here in 2016. But anyway, I was at a get-together, some type of Boy Scout get-together, jamboree, or whatever you want to call it, out at Timonium Fairgrounds, just north of Baltimore City. And I hooked up with a guy I went to school with, and we were in Boy Scouts together. And I just happened to be there. In fact, I think I was there for something else. I can't really remember why I was there, but we ran into each other. And he used to spend time with me when I was a kid out on the Gettysburg battlefield, and we used to spend nights out there too. So he knew I was into the paranormal. I mean, I've been doing this since the late '60s. So anyway. We sat down, had some lunch, and he was telling me about that he and a friend were going to be going out to the old Camp Conewaga the next weekend and looking into a phenomena or something that's been scaring scout troops out of the woods. And what was going on that summer was that these kids were describing these real horrible screaming sounds. And they were literally just getting so scared that they were packing up and leaving. And this was going on for several months.
Right.
So, when I did run into my friend, it was in October of 1988. And he asked me, he said, we're going out the next weekend. Do you want to tag along? And he knew I was into the paranormal. I wasn't really into cryptids, but I was. I mean, I was looking into the phenomena. I had a Bigfoot encounter years before. So, yeah, so I met them the next weekend. I drove up to Camp Conewaga, met them there at the campsite, and we walked into the woods and set up camp. This was a Friday evening, and it was pretty quiet that first night, and we were just sitting around talking, and nothing was happening. So each of us had a tent. So that next morning when we woke up, the other guy who was with it, was three of us, mentioned that he had heard something walking through the campsite. And I had it as well. I just thought it was one of those guys going into the woods to relieve themselves or whatever. Right. But nothing in the campsite was disturbed. So that Saturday, we were kind of out looking around the woods and stuff, and just looking around. Maybe we could see what may be causing the sound. So we got back to the campsite about 6. It was starting to turn dark. I sat down, had something to eat, and we just sat around the campfire. And I guess about 11 o'clock, we were getting ready to go to sleep, and we heard this screaming sound coming from the woods. So first thing I thought was maybe it was an animal, and a lot of wildlife, they make a lot of weird sounds sometimes. So we didn't pay too much attention to it. But then maybe a half hour or so later, we hear it again. Now this time it sounded like literally it sounded like a woman screaming. It was like blood curdling, and it sounded like it was kind of going in and out. Like it was either flying or moving itself through the woods real quickly. So we decided we were going to stay up the rest of the night. So about a half hour later or so, I got up from the campfire to stretch my legs, and I walked out onto the trail, which was right beside the campsite, and when you right by the creek. And I just had a weird feeling. I just had this strange feeling. So I went back and told those guys, I said, look, let's grab our flashlights, go onto the trail and walk up and down a bit and see what's up. So we did. We got on there back to back, walking down the trail. We didn't get maybe 50 foot away from the campsite, and we all saw it standing in the creek. Now, the creek was pretty shallow at that time, being in fall. But we saw the two red eyes, and they were projecting light. And all three of us saw us. And by the time we got the flashlights on it, this thing literally jettisoned into the air. And it was a loud, audible whooshing sound. And when it reached its apex, it screamed. I mean, let out this blood-curdling scream and took off. So we ran back to the campsite. My buddy, he was shook. He wasn't even talking. And the other guy mentioned to me, he said, did you see something on its back? And I did. I'd seen some type of structure on its back, but it wasn't like it was wings that were unfurling, but I think it was wings.
Right.
This thing didn't use any wings to lift itself off the surface. So we kept talking. My buddy said, well, I'm not sticking around. I'm going up to the administration building and spend the night up there. So both of them went up. I stayed at the campsite. I wanted to see what the heck this thing was. And but no, nothing else happened that evening. But that was my encounter.
Let me ask you about this artwork you've given us. These artist renditions. So look at some of those. Red eyes. Is that what you're saying? What you saw?
Yeah. Large red eyes. I mean, it wasn't reflective light either. This thing was projecting light.
Wow.
And that's the type of description we get for the majority of the sightings. People see these red eyes projecting light, and it startles them. But normally that's the first thing they notice. And I'd say maybe 80 to 85% of the sightings that we have had in and around Chicago have been these creatures, these winged creatures with the red projecting lights.
Now you on your site have created an interactive map of all these sightings.
Right.
Let's look at that. Yeah. We're talking 100, how many?
163.
Yeah, amazing. And
wow.
So, let me ask you this. So for years, and it goes back into I guess Native American mythology talks about things called thunderbirds.
Mm-hmm.
These large birds that people have a tendency to see those now, but it's hard to, when you're seeing them in the air, to really come to scale of how big they are. Mm-hmm. Do you think this has any correlation in what's flying around in Chicago?
No, I don't think there's any relationship at all. And in fact, even though people want to refer to this creature that's being seen around Chicago in the same light as the Mothman is Point Pleasant, they may come from the same place, but I don't think they're related. I think they're different type of creature. The wing structures are different. The wing structures are what we're seeing in Chicago for the most part have been membrane-like wings, bat-like structures. And a smaller head with the actual head that's somewhat small but not set into the body like the Mothman at Point Pleasant. The only real thing that's about the same is the red eyes.
Where do these things? I mean, if they're, say they are out there, where do they? How is it that nobody's catching them yet on cell phones? I mean, maybe it's just a matter of time. Everybody winds up catching something on a cell phone, but. Do you think they hide during the day? They're only active at night. Where can they hide in a city as large as populated as Chicago? Where can these creatures hide? What is your?
I don't think they're hiding. I mean, I think they're moving in and out of dimension. I think they have the ability to move into another another dimension. And I think it's a linear dimension. I think it's they have the ability to do this. And the sightings that people have, for the most part, are very fleeting sightings. By the time they realize they got a phone and they're going to pull it out and take a photograph of this thing, it's gone.
Right.
It's very quick.
And you've just got back from shooting a documentary in the Chicago area as well. Was it involving these things?
Yes, it is. We were out there in beginning of June working on a film.
And when do you see that being released? Are you
Don't know yet.
Okay. But yeah, I imagine you'll be letting us know through your social media.
Oh yeah. I'll have plenty of notice about it.
Lon, we enjoy speaking with you. If you want, we'd love for you to stick around because our next guest is going to talk about something that's right up your alley. She's known on TikTok as Murder Geek 7. Amanda Thomas is here to tell us some strange tales involving true crime. But Amanda, welcome back to The Road Beyond. Always good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me back. It's been a minute.
It has been. It has been. I've had a chance to see some of your shows. I enjoy watching those, and I know you put a lot of time into TikTok and informing your audience. But we can't seem to get away from this Conjuring story. Everywhere you go, it just seems like it keeps coming back, like a bad dream in many ways. Conjuring back again in big theaters, but you've got some information as well involving two paranormal investigators who people probably know from The Conjuring.
Yeah, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They're very, very popular amongst the paranormal group, I guess.
Have you seen the new Conjuring movie? I think it's called Red Door or something like that.
I have not. My kids are gone this week, and so I thought maybe I'd go check it out, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I might try to get a chance to see that. So tell us the latest information that you've got and bring us up to date here.
Sure. So actually, The Conjuring, I covered The Conjuring 2 over on my TikTok page, and that's the Enfield Poltergeist. I don't know if the reason that I covered it actually was because it's one of the only paranormal cases that has a police presence behind it. So there were officers that actually witnessed the paranormal activity and reported it in their police report. So,
Lon, are you familiar with this whole Conjuring thing? I know you know all about Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah, I am.
You see these movies. I mean, Amanda and I have talked about this before, but fact versus fiction, is it somewhere in the middle? Are these just Hollywood movies, or do you think there's really something to this, Lon?
I knew Ed and Lorraine. I had talked to them years ago, and I knew some people associated with them. And I think that case in particular, that there was something going on. Of course, it's not as it's demonstrated on film. I mean, there's always a bit of creative licensing added to any entertainment. But all in all, the gist of the film pretty well tells what happened.
Amanda, what's your take on all of this? I mean, Hollywood's got a job, make good movies that entertain people. And this has been, I mean, there's I think 5 different movies in this series, all surrounding Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Sure. So as far as Ed and Lorraine Warren, do I think that they were involved in some paranormal activity? Yeah, I do believe that. As far as the movies, I agree. It's Hollywood. You have to make things interesting, and you have to, keep your audience watching. And so, do I think that there was something going on in the end with this family? Yeah, I do. But to the extent that the movies show, probably not.
Not as much as I mean, they've 5 different movies off of this. I mean, this is getting a little bit too much, where we are now. Tell us some more of what you got going on, Amanda. Tell us a little bit more about what you have going on with this.
With the paranormal stuff, or with
right. What's been over the past few months, what's been your favorite story that you covered, that you got out there and you thought this is just, or maybe your most heartbreaking one that you've thought of over the last few months?
Well, my channel has gone more towards the true crime side of things. And it's because that's where my heart truly lies.
Right.
If you're talking about asking about just any case that's really just broken my heart, it's Rashim Carter off the top of my head. That one was heartbreaking. That one was really hard to cover. And but the scariest, I think, for me was actually the story of Veronica, and I sent that over to you guys. That's another one that I, talked about. That one really freaked me out. I had my notes typed up to film my whole story, and I laid them on my bed. And when I went to go to bed, I just could not sleep with those notes in my room that night.
For those who haven't seen it, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that story for the viewers who may have seen it. And we're also going to put a link into your social media in our post after the show so people can watch these.
Yeah, so Veronica was actually a story of a young girl who she had this group of friends, and one of her friends' boyfriend passed away in a car accident. And they wanted to see if they could speak to him on the other side. And so they had a seance where they tried to speak to him. And it was during the seance that her friends say that they noticed a black mass come into her body. And there was her entire family was haunted pretty much after that. She lived in Madrid, and they would hear scratching on the walls and screaming and dark shadows and those kinds of things. And eventually this would take her life.
It's pretty heartbreaking when you think of something like that. I mean, it's heartbreaking and it's chilling at the same time. Lon, I want to bring you back because I remember a story that we read that you had covered was about a year ago, I think. And it was about a theory on Bigfoot, which I totally get, where Bigfoot, big feet, I guess you may call them, aren't necessarily a cryptid, but maybe feral humans. I don't know if you remember that story. Do you remember writing that one a year ago?
There are all kinds of theories about Bigfoot. Mine in particular, I do believe there are indigenous beings. Are they feral humans? I guess to some extent that there have been accounts where people may have mistaken feral humans for some type of Bigfoot. All in all, I don't think Bigfoot is a feral human. I think there may be a separate indigenous species, but I also think, like most cryptids, I think they're interdimensional as well. And I think there are indigenous beings in certain areas, but I think just like the area where I live at here in the eastern part of the United States and into the Rust Belt and there, I think those areas, for the most part, do not have active populations, but have beings that kind of make their way to our Earth plane in some fashion.
You're saying, Lon, that they are interdimensional.
Yeah.
That that's
either what you call it extra-dimensional, multi-dimensional, but I think they don't necessarily live and survive and breed on our Earth plane. I think, like I said, I think there are populations where it does happen, and just like in Pacific Northwest, Florida, in certain areas. But all in all, I think for the most part, this cryptid and many other cryptids may very well be interdimensional beings.
Amanda, I want to bring you back in because I know you cover mainly true crime and paranormal, but obviously you're open-minded. What are your thoughts on cryptids like Bigfoots, flying humanoids? What have you looked in there, delved into this any with your shows?
I have a little bit, and I fully believe in Bigfoot, Mothman. I believe in all of it, 100%.
Are you more on the interdimensional? Because that seems like the most logical theory to myself, because my thing is like, where are these guys hiding in the day? There have been reports in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I mean, Dallas isn't heavily forested. If you go up there, there's not a thing. There's not many trees, it's barren in a lot of cases. But there have been reports of Bigfoot being seen in certain areas around water holes. Where do they go? How do they hide? But the interdimensional thing, that brings up a whole new point.
That makes perfect sense to me, in all honesty. Because you would think that if they wouldn't be able to do something like that, we would have discovered or, been able to find them and study, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Lon, do you think we're ever going to get, there have been some, I have to say in the last couple of years, in fact, you posted some pictures and videos on your site that are pretty good. And we featured them on the show at times. But do you think we're going to get clear video? Do you think we're going to get proof or is, do you see anything happening anytime soon?
Oh, I think we have had clear video. I mean, if you look at the Patterson-Gilman film, the Freeman film, and a few other ones, I think there's enough evidence to believe that people are actually getting photographs or video of these beings. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that they're indigenous, but I think some of the sightings and some of the recordings that people have made are of actual beings.
Amanda, what's your thought? You think we're going to get a clear video that's going to give us the ultimate proof we need that Bigfoot's out there? Do you think that's going to happen anytime soon?
No. No, I think everyone's always going to find an excuse for what it was. Yeah, no.
Yeah. I'd like to interject the point that if these are indeed interdimensional beings and that they have the consciousness that they are shifting from dimension to dimension, do they also have the power to blanket those who see them with a certain technology that almost impedes their ability to remember what they have seen?
The Men in Black phenomena. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my personal experience seeing Sasquatch up at Black Tusk in British Columbia in the 70s, I had personal experience of seeing something that I had a hard time remembering. And other Bigfoot people we've talked about had the same experience. Do they have the technology, the ability to hit your memory, to blanket their presence that way also?
Well, I mean, there's thought of that. We had a guy on this show a couple of years ago who talked about an experience of seeing a Bigfoot with his father when he was a teenager, and they were on a fishing trip. They didn't talk about it for 30 years. And then they decided to talk about it after 30 years goes by, and these guys didn't even talk.
That's pretty common.
It's crazy. Guys, we're running out of time. Lon Strickler, we appreciate you being here. We're going to have your information in our social media posts. Amanda, thank you so much. Always good to see you. Hope to see you in the future.
Absolutely. It was exciting to be here again. Thank you.
Good to see y'all. Scotty, thank you. Thank you all for joining us from The Road Beyond. Find us on Facebook and Twitter as The Road Beyond Podcast. Look for us in social media. We're here live, 7 p.m. Monday nights. We'll see you next time.